Hi, I'm Melisa Ruscsak. I am a survivor of domestic violence. I grew up in a little dot on a map called Lorain, Ohio. I was a shy little brook nerd and kept to myself and really didn't have a big circle of friends. Mom and biological father divorced when I was 6 months old. Mom ended up being in a domestic violence relationship herself. And because of the trauma from that and her work schedule as she was healing herself, Grandma and Grandpa got me. I was a grandpa's girl, so I took more after his personality than my grandmother's. And still today, I have more of him than her. I can't remember when the sexual abuse actually started. Thankfully, I was 4 till the time I was 6, so I only have fragmented memories of that trauma. I can remember my mother's then husband coming into the room. I can remember having survival instincts enough that my grandfather gave me a spool of nylon thread. I booby trapped my bedroom, hid in my toy box, which was in my closet, and tied my closet door so it couldn't open. This is a 4-year-old. I don't know if he realized it. I don't remember telling him, because if I've told him, my grandfather was a type of person that he would have took care of the problem himself if he couldn't do it legally. So I don't think I ever told my grandfather why I needed nylon thread, other than I found it in his drawer and he gave it to me. The assault with my mother's then husband lasted from the time I was 4 until she left him when I was in kindergarten, so about 6 years old. I never told my mother, I don't think, only because A, she was working, B, there was a lot of her own violence going on at the time. My mother's then husband also threatened to kill her if I told her. And to illustrate that he would do it, he took me hunting one time, and he had a shotgun and killed a rabbit, and that's the rabbit we had for dinner that night. The day I found out he was out of the picture, I was so happy because I got to live with Grandpa now. And I was Grandpa's girl, and Grandpa started teaching me martial arts. So at 6 years old, I'm starting to learn martial arts. I'm starting to do the things that I want to do. Luckily, the sexual abuse stopped when I was 6. 2011, I was in my first marriage. I was in and out of the hospital with undiagnosed something. And I had lost like 20 pounds at the time. No one could figure out what was going on. The doctor found a mass in my brain that needed to be surgically removed and said it was life-threatening. I was then life-flighted to another hospital, was dismissed from the hospital, and had surgery scheduled 2 weeks later. In the 2 weeks before my surgery, I had a stroke. So now I'm with a husband that doesn't want to really take care of a crippled person, going through brain surgery, wake up in the ICU after the brain surgery, finding out I had a second stroke on the table. 11 days after leaving the hospital, I found out he was cheating on me. Here I am, I'm pretty much in a wheelchair. I can walk a little bit with a cane. I could barely speak English. Yes, you heard me right. I couldn't speak English. I was speaking Romanian. And who wants a woman in her 20s with an autistic daughter who's been divorced, that has a slew of medical problems and probably won't live 10 years. So I started the dating sites, and I just randomly, I seen this nice profile, wasn't thinking anything of it. I seen that he was a veteran, so I said, thank you for your service. And that was the first thing I said to him. He ended up moving in with my grandmother, myself, my uncle, and my daughter, living in the same house a month later. This is the end of 2011. 2011, I believe I was 28 years old, and he was 10 years older. Now, the abuse didn't start until much later, and it was already too late to leave, so I thought, when it happened. But before that, we were good. We're dealing with learning how to deal with an autistic child. We end up having a fight. He left. And then about a week later, maybe a week later, I ended up moving my daughter and me into his apartment. The abuse then started with mental and emotional. So how this started was, why can't you clean the house like a normal housewife. Remember, at this time, I'm walking with a cane and pretty much in a wheelchair. Still having a seizure, still partly blind, have neurological disadvantages. So obviously anything I do is not going to be a normal housewife. Then he would bring into my past trauma from being abused. That was a weapon. That was a tool for him to control me. Another tool was I didn't have money at this time. I wasn't working. My disability at that time hadn't kicked in. I was on welfare, and that was the only support I had. I couldn't go back to grandma's because I can't go back knowing she was right. So now what do? I stayed in that relationship. Every time I tried to leave, it was, oh, honey, I'm sorry. Here's a new piece of jewelry. I'm sorry, honey. Let's go out to dinner. It won't happen again. In 2012, we moved 2 hours away from my family to a secluded farmhouse, and the emotional and the mental abuse got worse because now we're in a bigger house that I can't take care of. I can't go out and get a job. I'm making friends with the neighbors. Well, because I'm making friends with the neighbors, we have to move. 6 months after moving into the farmhouse, we moved into a smaller house, which was a little bit better and easier on me, but I'm still trying to leave. 2013, December, we decided to get married to make everything better. So we go out to Vegas. The day of the wedding, he's yelling at me at the hairdresser. He's yelling at me because I forgot to pack his pants. By the time we got to the altar, I wanted to bolt. I was in tears. If I would have said no and ended it right then, how do I get home? He has my plane ticket. He has my daughter's plane ticket. He has my money. The only way I'm getting back to Ohio is saying yes. 3 months later, we moved to another farmhouse. Why? I started making friends. So we moved into a secluded farmhouse where the nearest neighbor was a 1/4 mile away in any direction. This is when things got bad. They were accidents. They were always accidents. Me going through a table was an accident. Going through in my computer desk and breaking that was an accident. During all of this, we're going through the VA appointments, and the doctor had a wonderful idea. Please keep a note of all of his outbursts. Keep a journal of why he was flipping out. And honestly, it could be walking into a room. It could be dinner wasn't done at exactly 6 o'clock. It could be the laundry is taking too long. It could have been anything under the sun, whatever the excuse was for that day. So I started recording, sometimes audio, sometimes video, a video diary about what was going on. And then I would tell his psychiatrist, I've been recording this. Do you want to see what's going on? And then I denied the recordings. They can't see that. This is a VA system who told me what to do, now denying the existence of the films. This went on to 2017. So 2013, we got married. 2017, this was still going on. 2017, he tried to choke me. I can't remember what the disagreement was about. I think the TV was too loud and was interfering with his video game. And he started choking me. My daughter ran and got the phone, called 911. This is the first time in 4 years we called 911. 2 days later, this was January, I ended up moving into my own apartment in February. January, I broke my foot. So now I have a cast on my foot, and that was my own fault. That wasn't contributed to anything else. I was moving into my apartment. I had a little red wagon, that was my daughter's. We loaded that up and walked 2.5 miles in the snow with the wagon with a broken foot to my apartment, back and forth to get my stuff. I didn't have money for U-Haul. When I finally got the money for a U-Haul, I had friends helping me load the car, the U-Haul truck, and he had a fit. There was a big fight. My helpers left, and they met me on my apartment to unload. They would not help me finish loading. The cast came off. I ended up getting a radio show. Started working on Atlanta Mix 108. Re-broke my foot. Same foot. So I had to have surgery. In this meantime, my resilience of I'm going to make it on my own meant walking to work with a broken foot at 3 o'clock in the morning, 8 miles, one way. I had my disability, I have heart conditions, and I was forcing my body to walk 8 miles a day just so I wouldn't have to go back to him. So here I am working, living in an apartment that's only 2.5 miles away. He would call my phone, harassing me. Baby, I love you. Please come back. It ended up getting to the point where I had to have surgery on my foot. I could not walk up the stairs with the cast and after surgery. The type of cast they were giving me, I wouldn't have been able to put weight on it. So we made an arrangement. I would rent my bedroom out of his house. I would pay for my cable, my internet, and I would help pay the electric bill. So I'm a renter at this point. I am not his wife. That is how we structured it. That is not what happened. The abuse got worse. At the same time, I'm going through my Atlanta Mix 108 doing radio shows. And I met a wonderful mentor. And after the show, he asked me off camera, what is holding you back? I've known you for 30 minutes. Something is holding you back. You sound like you have a lot to give, but you are so closed off. How does this person I just met know my problems? He doesn't know anything about me. So he sent me his book, and I started reading his book. Well, his book turned into going through his courses because he gave me a year's worth of courses through his online mindset coaching program that normally costs way more than what I could make in a year at this point for free. The same day he met me is the day I started standing up for myself, which actually made things better, sort of, but not really. I was doing these podcasts from my house. So I was not in a recording studio. I was not in an office building. I was doing these from the comfort of my home, which wasn't very comfortable. I have recordings that actually had to be stopped because my then husband would come in the room, start yelling. So I finally left and moved 2 hours away back to grandma's house. The abuse didn't stop. He's halved my phone number. He's now using everything against me in the divorce. I'm using his name as my pen name. I'm using his name on my radio show. He wants to sue me for using his name. Now, mind you, it's not his name. It's the legal last name I have. So I'm going through this. My first company, which was called Ruscsak Films and Publishing, crumbled because he was suing me. My first publishing company, Dove and Dragon Radio, was barely hanging on a thread because of the stress that I was going through with this divorce. We moved back to a closer area. My grandmother, myself, my mother, and my daughter moved so she could be closer to school because I didn't want to transfer her from the school that was helping her to another school for the last 2 years of high school. The abuse didn't stop. Now I have a stalker. Now I'm getting a phone call from my phone, and I have a wannabe hitman saying pay them $5,000 or they're going to kill me. Now I can't prove my ex-husband was involved, but there was a lot of legal things going on at the time. I can prove the number that was used went back to someone within his legal department that he was using to have the divorce. The abuse doesn't stop just because you leave. You still have the mental abuse. You still have the stalking. Unfortunately, it took me getting a new boyfriend who's the love of my life. So there is hope. When I met my boyfriend, the harassment, the phone call stopped. The driving past the house stopped. There was things that stopped because I started using my podcast to talk about my boyfriend. How much I love him and how much he's helped me overcome some of the trauma. So healing for me started off as a very bad habit of throwing myself into work. 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, and just working. It's a very bad habit. I do not recommend it to anyone. It wasn't until my company started working ahead and going back to these classes that I had access to all these years, and I started finding people to help me heal because I needed to tell my story. 2020, October 2020, I had the privilege of speaking at an event for RAIN, which is for abuse survivors. I wasn't ready yet, but yet I did it. And after I did it, one lady came up to me. I'll never know her name, really. She said, "Thank you. You just saved my life. I do it because of her." The advice I give for people going through a domestic violence problem, it doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your sexual orientation, it doesn't matter if it's your roommate, your significant other, or a parent. Get away from it. Run. If you need help, it's out there. You just have to ask for it. You have to get over the pride and ask for help. For the ones that are just leaving, my advice to you, don't go back. Don't listen to lies. You'll be okay. Do yourself a favor. Go train yourself in martial arts. Not because you're going to use it for self-defense, but the discipline for your mind will help you overcome what's going on. During 2013, so this is when I was in the violence, my then husband said, "I bet you can't write a book and get it published." So I wrote a book. I got it published. Then I wrote my second book. Then I wrote my third book. Since leaving, I now have 19. Now I also have a entrepreneur magazine. I have a podcast that has 2.2 million viewers. I'm giving you numbers because where I was in 2017 is not who I am today. Who you were yesterday is not who you are today. You do not have to go back to that person. You have a light inside of you that is meant to grow. Thank you for listening to my story. And if you would like to continue this conversation, you can do so on mlruscsak.com. And more of my story is there for the public. You can find some of the actual videos from my abuse on YouTube if you search my name. I'm here to be helpful. And if I can help you with your journey, please reach out.